Remember how we did a little bit of through lining earlier, right? When we were up here with Talia and Jennifer Justice. My through line, my hair would stay off my lipstick. I was remembering back to Elizabeth this morning, right? The helicopter pilot. And what'd she say? Her whole thing was, yes, I can, right? I was like, ooh, that's a really good equal sign for here, because on stage, I have 3 female entrepreneurs. They were all in different careers before starting their businesses that they're going to share with you today. They all had to tell themselves millions of times, yes, I can. So let's get started. I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves with their own stories. There's some slideware supporting us. And Dana, we're going to start with you.
Sounds great. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Dana Spalding, and I'm the founder and CEO of Wander and Ivy, which is right here, the premium and organic single-serve wine brand. My background is personal in that one evening I came home after a long day. I wanted to celebrate this little win from the office. And my husband, after I made this big, beautiful dinner, he leaned over to me and said, "Are you really going to waste another bottle of wine?" And I was really annoyed initially because I really wanted to enjoy one great glass of wine at the end of a long day while he had his whiskey. However, I did realize that he was right, that pretty often I'd find myself opening up a traditional wine bottle, I'd pour myself a glass, and then a couple of days later, I'd find myself throwing away a portion of the wine bottle that had spoiled. And so at that point, I started personally shopping in the single-serve or alternative packaging wine aisle. And what I found was really low-quality wines in really low-quality packaging, like the cans, the bags, and the boxes, which for me did not at all feel like a luxury. It all felt like I was settling in some way. And I also found no focus on clean, organic, and transparent ingredients. And so all of that was my spark to create what I was looking for but not finding in market, which was the premium and organic single-serve wine brand. So I'll pause there. That's my story, a little bit about me, but would love to pass it to these ladies.
Dana, in maybe 2 sentences,
Oh,
what
sure.
were you doing before founding Wander and Ivy?
Yeah, so I spent almost a decade within private wealth management at JP Morgan, and I initially covered hedge fund principals and Wall Street executives, which was an incredible experience, but it was really the latter half of my time at JP Morgan which immensely inspired me. My role was managing wealth for very successful entrepreneurs in food and beverage. And so I was just so inspired by what they were doing. My job was to get to know them, get to know their businesses, and really manage their wealth after an exit. And so I really loved what I was learning and ultimately wanted to be on the other side of the table.
Great. Thank you. Tiffany, we'd love to hear your story.
Well, my story is quite similar to Dana. Like, I love the sentence about sitting in the other side of a table. So I graduated as an engineer and dive into technology consulting back then. Then later I did my MBA in New York. Then I pivoted into private equity. And that is actually the moment I decided to not like sitting in the other side of a table, switching that. Well, I call it the moment, it's like the Erica moment. It's like I was in JFK. I was having this business travel from JFK to Hong Kong. It's a 15 hours long flight. I was shuffling my laptop into my luxury handbag, which started with a C. I'm not going to tell you which brand it is. While I was shuffling my laptop into my bag, the strap broken. Like everything, literally my laptop, my makeup, and everything you need on the flight was dropping on the floor. And here and there, I was like, oh my God, this is not right. This is the moment I was like, I saw, because I invested into technology, cutting edge technology. And I solved so many problems. And all the women here, like, this is not right. Nobody solved my problem. That's why I decided to jump out, to start my own thing, to sitting in the other side of a table. But another thing I always asking myself is like, what is deep down there you want to change. It's because of dynamic. I was working in finance. I was working in Wall Street. I never feel like myself. That leave me powerless. Even though I was cutting like $1 million of deal, I feel powerless. I want to be myself. And I want to offer something like a work style really fit for your personal style so that you can all feel like yourself, retain that power, going on your own journey and conquer that. Then maybe that 3% of venture capital money will eventually bump into 30%.
Yes.
That's it.
I love that spark of the feeling of powerlessness to power. That's fantastic. And Amelia, your tequila, Cinco.
So I spent 30 years on Wall Street, mostly in the energy sector. 23 of those years were at Bloomberg, where I was tapped very early on as someone who could start and run businesses, which helped me when I started Syncoro. So I was the founding CEO, now executive chair, and Syncoro is an award-winning tequila. And it was created by a very interesting group because we are arch rivals. We are 5 NBA arch rivals. And hence Syncoro, 5 gold. And my partners are Jeannie Buss, who owns the LA Lakers, my husband, Wick Grossbeck, owner of the Boston Celtics, Michael Jordan, who owned the Charlotte Hornets when we launched, and Wes Edens, who owns the Milwaukee Bucks. And we are extremely competitive. And I'd say Michael is probably the most competitive person I've met. And so when it started one summer night in this 2016, we all 5 of us got together for dinner. Everyone was in town for NBA Board of Governor meetings. And we had actually everything was over tequila. We all loved tequila. We've always loved tequila. But Michael was the true tequila connoisseur in the group. And that night, we bonded over our shared love for tequila. And we started talking about what we love in a tequila. And we realized it wasn't actually on the market. Because how many people in this room have had a bad tequila experience? Okay, yeah. All right. Well, we didn't want that. We wanted a tequila that tasted delicious. Who uses the word delicious to describe tequila? And that was our goal. And we are highly competitive. Winning is in our DNA. So we were determined to make the world's most delicious tequila. And it took us 3 years. After that dinner in August of 2016, we did not launch until 2019 because we spent 3 years creating the liquid. And you can see, well, if you go back one slide, all those glasses on that table, that was one of our tastings. Wow. One tasting. And we had 4 distilleries competing to blend the right recipe for us. And what was so unique is, again, we created the recipe, and it needed to be ultra smooth, a long, beautiful finish like a fine cognac or a bourbon, had to have a beautiful aroma, and getting all those things at the very highest level was a real challenge. And we were not going to stop until we nailed it. We are so meticulous in the quality of this tequila that Michael and I, to this day, taste every batch before we bottle.
She was actually sharing with us last night that she and Michael text back and forth, tasting notes. Like 2 friends trying to get ready to go to a party that night, and they're crafting on the same notes, so they're really just so well aligned to what they want in their product.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a beautiful bottle, right? That's a lot of creativity, a lot of meticulousness and insistence about what you wanted. Can you take us on your design and creative journey to what we see here in front of us?
Yes. Well, thank you for that question.
I'm not sure how it fits in my back bar, being so tall, but I'm up for the challenge.
We actually have a mini. It's somewhere over there. Oh, yes. Let's so grab cute. The mini. So that will fit. We have created this award-winning liquid. It is just so amazing. And we needed a bottle that was going to stand up to this liquid. And so as the CEO, I was running around trying to figure out how to make a bottle. So I was going to agencies like Stranger & Stranger who create incredible bottles. And we were having board meetings quite regularly. And Michael Jordan walks in with Mark Smith. who is the Jordan Brand shoe designer. And he goes, yeah, guys, I called Mark Smith and I asked him to make us a tequila bottle. Now, Mark had never done anything in glass. And so Mark's response when Michael said this, he said, close your eyes and tell me what you see. And Michael said, it's sleek, it's going to be contemporary, and it's got to be unique. And that was the brief. And so they designed this 5-sided bottle. Never before made a 5-sided bottle. If you feel the bottom of the bottle, it slants 23 degrees as a nod to see, Michael was all over the design. So the bottom of the bottle slants 23 degrees. The stopper slants 23 degrees. It has a slight curve, which makes it look like an agave leaf from the side. And if you line up 23 bottles exactly, as in the photo, they form a perfect circle. And the diameter of that circle is the same as the tip-off circle on an NBA court.
That is very cool.
There's a ring around the neck of the bottle that says share truth, and that's super important to us because if I had to use one word to describe the group, I'd say authentic. And our truth and our passion was to create this delicious tequila to share with our friends. So when you're pouring the tequila, you're pouring through our truth.
How much does a bottle cost?
This one is about $120.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. I'm curious, from this highly competitive set of co-founders, who had the most insistent voice in the creative process? Who did you want to shut in a closet for a couple of days?
You know,
the most?
yeah, that's
Let's spill a little tea.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, and one of the questions I get asked is, how in the world did you manage to get these really big personalities to agree on anything? And you know, what was really interesting is that my partners and I are collaborators by nature and partners. Everyone knows how to operate within a team. Mm-hmm. And so we have always aligned. And it was, everybody kind of had their thing. Michael's was the creativity. Michael is a creative genius. And he, like the look, the weight, you know, the design, it was all Michael. And the liquid is Michael and I. We just tasted our latest añejo 2 days ago. Wes was supply chain king and really helped with that. Wick was more on the business side. Jeannie held up our flag on the West Coast. So everyone had something to add, and it just really worked. Worked really well. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Tiffany, can you take us through some of your design and creative process? Because you were solving a need that you got pretty ticked off about with your belongings scattered throughout JFK. But you just didn't design another utility piece. They're beautiful, and we talked last night, it's Italian leather, but it's lightweight. I carry an Argentine leather business bag. That thing is way too heavy, schlepping through airports all the time. But in addition to the materials, your design process and what you and your partners went through to get to your first release, if you will.
So Oleada's design process is very custom-centric. So why it's like that? Because I'm not from the fashion world. I come from an engineering background. When I first got a job, I'm assigned as a creative director of Oleada because I have another co-founder. She is the operating co-founder. I'm more creative side. I was like, oh my God, I do not have the background. How can I solve this problem? Maybe I should think about what I'm good at, engineering. And I think about the one methodology we always use in software and product design, which is called design thinking. Mm. And that is a way you kind of have all the stakeholders, your customers, your designers, your customer service people, your content people, marketing people, all together in a round table and design a prototype. And push that prototype into the testing ground and get feedback and constant feedback. Even though we have a booth over there, you can checking out our bags. And one of our first release, a Vivia bag, you couldn't believe that we already upgrade 17 times. And why we can upgrading that, because we constantly receiving customer feedback through our like email, through our social media, through our recycling program. So we offer a recycling program for all our customers. If you are done with your bag, send back to us, and we give you 30% of cash back. But that, for most people, like, oh, are you doing it for retention? Are you doing it for sustainability? But one deep reason we're doing that is like, I believe like a bag tells a story. Once you're done with that life journey, once you send back to us, we can analyze that. We know, oh, this part is worn out. That part is having a certain crease. So that we can implement on that.
Brilliant.
We can develop on that. That is like software, like 1.0 to 2.0 to 2.2 and all that. The perfect work bag. That is where it comes from.
That is fabulous. That is design thinking and engineering in practice.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Dana, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You kind of took us through some of your process. There are plenty of suburban wives wine drinking cliches, memes. I mean, come on. Damn it, I just want a good glass of Pinot Noir without somebody cracking a joke about it, all right? But you are striving for this simplified, elevated experience, serving the need that you personally had.
Yeah.
Can you take us through feedback you've gotten or your process to like nail the brand in the way you have nailed it?
Yes, there's certainly a lot of cliches out there. And one of the things I noticed early on with what did exist out there to be able to offer a great, quote, great glass of wine at the end of a long day was the can. There were just seas of cans, honestly.
Yes.
And I felt as though if I was going to step into this category and leave, frankly, my career that I'd worked really hard for, it was comfortable, it was lucrative. If I was going to step away from that for something that was incredibly high risk, it needed to have so many points of differentiation to set me up for success. Yeah. And so I knew it needed to be so different from everything else out there. And from a design perspective, to solve not only my problems, but to your point, kind of get to that elevated experience for that woman that we were trying to solve for, I wanted to do something so different. And so one of the things that I thought was such great advice for me early on was pulling advice from outside of the wine category, pulling advice and inspiration, rather, from outside of the category. So don't just be so siloed of what is going on in the wine category right now. Look at what does luxury look like in other areas, because ultimately what I and our team wants to do is create that luxury everyday experience for the woman when they come home.
Right.
And so for us, pulling inspiration from food and beverage outside of wine was incredibly helpful in landing on our design, and so different from everything else that was out there. For me, it was interesting. One, I did the exploration of personally shopping the cans, bags, and boxes. I put it in my fridge and then further annoyed my husband because I actually wasn't drinking it. And that for me was such an aha moment of this could not be more convenient. It is in my fridge, in the comfort of my home, and I'm still not drawn to it. And so what I really wanted to do was create something that you come home at the end of a long day and you don't feel guilty about wasting a whole bottle, that you really feel like is a luxury, and it can hit that occasion. Oh, I love this slide because our goal is to really meet the consumer where they're at, especially from an occasion standpoint. So, you know, whether you're cooking and you want to sip on a great glass of wine or use a little great wine in your meal, or you're hosting and you don't want to open up 6 or 7 bottles and have wasted wine at the end of the night, you can create really customized, wonderful experience for your guests. Whether it's a picnic or like me, which is that last picture, if you're just coming home and wanting to unwind, read a book, and have a great glass. So really meeting the consumer where they're at and creating this elevated experience was our goal.
Right. And the bottles are recyclable.
Oh yeah, fully recyclable.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm curious about tequila buyers.
Yes.
In your research that you all have found, and I know that there may be some influence with having a MBA star as a co-founder, but is it men or women that mostly buy tequila?
It skews a little bit more women, but it's pretty even, I'd say. And what's really great about Sincoro, and one of the things that we really focused on when we created the taste, was we really wanted to create the evolution of tequila. because we wanted it to appeal to many. So if you had a bad tequila experience, you're going to love Sincoro. If you're a whiskey drinker or a cognac drinker, you're going to love Sincoro because it's a delicious, elevated, high-end luxury spirit.
Love that. Love that. We're going to start to wrap, but I have a question that I'm going to borrow from one of my favorite podcasts. I have no financial interest in this podcast at all, but it's by Hillary Kerr, who started Who, What, Where, and the podcast is called Second Life. She emails a new female entrepreneur every week, and they had a first act, and they've all done something different in their second act. And she always closes every podcast with this question. If you could go back and tell your much younger self, pick a decade and age, whatever that might be, give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? You're talking to your younger self. Because we represent a whole bunch of ages in this room today. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So it's hard for me to say one thing, but I would
say
say
two.
I'm going to say a couple things. So as an entrepreneur, you're going to have ups and downs. There are going to be highs and lows. It's guaranteed. And I think it's super important to approach it with a positive attitude and really do an amazing job in hiring and then believing in your people. Tell them you believe in them. It makes a big difference. It just hit me like a ton of bricks 2 weeks ago. Jeannie Buss was over, and we were talking about everything going on in the spirits industry right now, which is at a 40-year low, by the way. And Jeannie says, Amelia, I believe in you. And it really changes. And, and you also, it's about being the first one in, the last one to leave, and setting that tone of hard work, because you're never going to get there if you're not the hardest working person in the room. And I'd say, be the Michael Jordan. He set the bar. If you guys saw The Last Dance, he sets the bar so high.
Right.
And, you got to be that person.
Thank you. Dana?
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said, which is why I'm going to say what I was going back and forth between what you just said and what I'm going to say now, which is, I think in many ways contradictory, which is take care of yourself. And I think that's really, really hard because we have to have that mindset.
Right.
You have to have that mindset. However, I have learned that the business won't thrive unless you are thriving, unless you're taking care of yourself. I'm a mom of 2 little ones. And that is hard. It's hard to take care of yourself while you're taking care of others, while you're taking care of your business and setting the bar so high. However, when you take care of yourself, I say this as someone who is struggling that I'm going on vacation in a day and a half, and making sure that I take a few days to unplug is hard.
Right.
However, it's incredibly important to take care of yourself so that you can show up as the absolute best version of yourself for you, your family, and your business. So I think that's where I would go.
Thank you. And Tiffany?
Hard because you guys already mentioned the best point. So I actually have that reflection a month ago. So I was just realized that I should be so proud of myself in a way. Like I was born in Shanghai and then moved to Hong Kong. I live in 3 continents. There's a constant family dramas in my childhood. I should be so proud of myself, like being to be who I am today. And everyone should be proud of yourself. Tell your younger self, like, you should be proud of yourself. You couldn't believe who are you becoming today. And that is what I really want to tell myself. And then another piece of really practical advice I would love to give my younger self is like, move forward. Do not look back. And always trust your guts.
Yes.
That's the best thing.
That is awesome. I can't think of a better way to wrap us right now than that. Be proud of yourself. Tell your younger self to give your current self a big high five. Dan, we're all yours. Thank you, ladies.
That's good.